and welcome to another episode of Whiskey Angels. Today we're delving into a piece of iconic whiskey history, the wartime shipwreck just off a remote Scottish island. We're talking about the SS Politician, which had, 22,000 cases of whiskey on board?
Yep, and cash, about £3 million in Jamaican banknotes. And that was a fortune back then.
Incredible. I'm joined today by Debs, who will be helping us navigate the story of the SS Politician. Welcome to Whisky Angels.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. So we're taking a dive beneath the waters of Scotland's west coast to chat about the hijinks and the chaos that followed after the SS Politician ran aground.
Yeah, now before we get stuck into that, just a quick shout out. You can join us and become a Whisky Angel yourself. Find us on YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're also on Substack, where you can join our Cast Strength Chaos and all the major podcast platforms as well. Just search for Whisky Angels with a Z. It's really important for us to get you backing us up here because we're so shiny and brand new. Right, back to our story, the watery grave of the SS Politician.
Yeah, but it's interesting. The ship itself, the Politician, she had a bit of history. She was originally called London Merchant, was built in 1923 and ran routes between Britain, the US and Canada.
And you mentioned something about Prohibition?
Yeah, funny story. So in 1924, during American Prohibition, she had whiskey seized in Oregon.
You're joking.
Yep, no, honestly. But apparently the British Embassy, they then stepped in and they managed to get it released. So she has some form with valuable cargo, and later during the war she was also involved in Atlantic convoys. She was definitely not just some random tramp steamer.
Right, okay, so that sets the scene. February 1941, this, although they don't know it, the final voyage starts from Liverpool.
Yep, okay, from Liverpool heading north, they aim to join a convoy that's bound for the US and the Caribbean.
And in the cargo?
Yep, real mix. Cotton, machetes, sweets, cutlery, all sorts of stuff. But the real treasure, that was in hold number 5.
Hold number 5, that's got to be the name of a pop group. Anyway, that hold number 5 was packed with Jamaican banknotes, about £3 million worth, about £187 million today. And of course, 22,000 cases of Scotch whisky.
Yeah, and that whisky was important for the war effort. Yep.
Yeah, hugely. It came from the bonded warehouses in places like Leith and Glasgow, which incidentally had been getting damaged with bombing during the war as well.
Yeah, so that was their kind of secure storage, if you like, before taxes were paid.
Exactly. And now it was heading to the US to raise desperately needed hard currency.
Yeah, crucially, no UK duty had been paid on it because it was for export.
Okay, and that becomes very important, legally speaking, later on.
Yep, right. So this ship is packed with valuables, sailing north. So, yeah, what happens next?
The weather turns. 4th of February, 1941. Bad weather, poor visibility, roll the sound effects if we have them.
And she runs off Eriskay in the Outer Hebrides, hits the rocks. Bit of a debate at the time exactly where the spot was. Some say to the east coast of Eriskay, some say south US.
No, we're pretty much sure it's in the north because people have been diving the site, so we pretty much know it's the north.
Yep, but either way, the hull was breached, engine room flooded. Disaster. Captain Worthington, he ordered everyone off, abandon ship.
Yep, that must have been quite a horrendous experience. How many crew?
51, apparently. They sent some SOS calls ashore.
And they all made it amazingly.
Amazingly, every single one, thanks to local lifeboats and local fishermen and the like.
Yeah, so a big community presence that really, no doubt, are used to kind of rallying whenever they see a ship in trouble. But that was lucky. Good stuff.
Yep. And whilst the sailors were being looked after ashore, they might have let slip what was in the hold of the ship.
Yeah. The whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. Cat was out of the bag.
Okay. You can just picture the islanders' ears pricking up. Wartime. Things are scarce, especially whiskey.
Yeah, very heavily rationed during wartime, really expensive, if you could even find it at all. So the next morning, folks started heading out towards the wreck.
Just like that.
Yeah, well, pretty much. But it wasn't easy pickings. Hold 5 with the whiskey was flooded with seawater and oil, so pretty hard to get to.
Ugh, messy.
Yeah, very messy, but it didn't stop them trying. So the local customs men, they pretty quickly started to suspect that looting was happening almost immediately. Yep.
Okay, so the authorities were pretty quick onto it.
Yeah, they were pretty quick onto it, and also a salvage crew arrived pretty fast as well, called the Liverpool and Glasgow Salvage Association.
Okay, proper professionals.
Yep, and they got about 500 tons of general cargo off the ship, but key, they didn't touch hold 5.
The most important hold there. They ignored the whiskey and the banknotes.
Yeah, but it seemed like it was too difficult. Maybe it was the flooding, maybe the oil. But what's the odds is they refused to put a guard on the ship overnight. Strange move.
Yeah, even with the customs, but a guard on a ship that's sinking in the middle of the night. I would imagine there's not many people wanting to be guarding that.
Yeah, some of their own salvage crew got caught with whiskey, funnily enough, when they made it back to the mainland.
Okay, that's comical. Negligent, of course, but
You think
comical.
so? It certainly raised eyebrows. So did they just not care, or what was going on in thinking? Hard to say. No guard. Yeah.
No guard. Okay, valuable cargo just sitting there.
Yep. So eventually Customs and Excise stepped in, 10th of March. They put an excise seal on hold 5.
Signifying duty not paid.
Yeah, exactly. So it was now officially illegal to remove anything without paying any tax. 2 days later, the salvage crew packed up and left.
Leaving the sealed hold behind.
Yep.
Okay, we've reached the main event.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the professionals gone, it became a bit of a free-for-all for the islanders from Eriskay, and in fact all over the Hebrides and even the mainland.
Okay, and what did the sources call it? Wholesale rescuing?
Wholesale rescuing, I think that was maybe the term. And they even had help from a local who'd worked on the politician, so he knew the layout of the boat.
Okay, an inside man.
Yep, he could sort of guide them really, and help them work their way through the wreck.
Okay.
Remember, this was wartime rationing. The whiskey was genuinely like gold dust.
So we have a clash of brewing official rules versus local opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Officialdom failed, left a vacuum, and the community stepped in with its own salvage operation of sorts.
Yeah, okay. That sounds pretty intense then. Dozens of men working at night. In fact, probably many people from the community, kids, grown-ups, all...
I expect they were all involved.
They were
Probably
all involved.
night after night, apparently, in the pitch black, hauling crates out of the oily water.
Grim work, and you mentioned their clothes were ruined.
Yeah, saturated in thick fuel oil. Some even used their wives' dresses to try to keep it off.
Okay, that must have been all quite a sight. And then, of course, they have the other challenge of hiding it all.
Yep, so they got pretty creative here. Rabbit holes, peat stacks, under floorboards, even sunk some caches into the sea.
Okay, there's a story of somebody shoving it in a cave as well, and then going back, and the cave had mysteriously been emptied by other locals.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot going on.
Hard to keep it quiet. Well, word eventually got out, which brings us to the local customs officer, Charles McCall.
The antagonist, perhaps.
Yeah, well, it depends on your view. He saw himself as simply upholding the law. He started intercepting boats, 15th of March, even commanded a boat himself.
Okay, so he took over a boat and took the initiative.
Yeah, he did. And he did manage to stop several boats, noted down names, 18 men in one day.
Okay, so he was making progress.
Yeah, but finding the hidden stashes, that was much harder. He and a constable, they searched crofts, confiscated thousands of items, but no whiskey.
They were just too good at hiding it, or too good at drinking it, possibly as well.
Maybe. It seems that way. And McCall apparently didn't go out to the wreck at all at night, which is, of course, when most of the action and most of the rescuing was happening.
Rescuing,
yeah.
Missed a trick. Missed a trick
there, yeah. So this cat and mouse game ramped up throughout April. Weather improved. McCall kept patrolling, and searching expanded to South Uist.
But the islanders were very wise to him.
Oh yes. So they hid it even more carefully, and there were whispers that even some local police were perhaps turning a blind eye to it as well.
Yeah, that's kind of understandable. Maybe there'll be personal relationships involved, and if you've ever been to a whiskey island when they're having a festival, there's an awful lot of whiskey being drunk.
Bribery, maybe, who knows?
Maybe.
Possibly. So McCall wasn't finding much. Police in Barra, they did arrest 4 men for theft after hearing about a large-scale selling.
Yeah, that's a next door neighbouring island. So anyway, so some legal action started there.
Yeah, a bit of legal action. Yeah.
And then another salvage crew turns up.
Yeah, so just to complicate things, 9th of April, a company called Whisky arrives, the British Iron and Steel Corporation. Their main interest was actually in scrapping the ship.
Different motive, but...
Yeah, but they ended up salvaging a lot of cargo. So get this, 13,500 cases of whiskey,
Yeah.
plus 3 casks and various other goods.
That's a huge amount. A lot more than the first team managed to achieve.
Yeah, I know they clearly had a more efficient a job going here. So, but here's the twist. Eyewitnesses said the Whisky crew were also helping themselves to the whiskey.
Ah, the official salvage crew.
Well, apparently so. Yeah, so they're even sharing it with the islanders again. Maybe a bit of bribery there for not telling, but completely different vibe from the first crew. Yeah.
So much for recovering it for the authorities.
Yeah,
Well,
quite.
it sounds like the authorities got some of it back as well.
Yeah, but by this point, the lines are just becoming pretty blurred here. Around this time, reports started about the Jamaican banknotes as
Okay,
well,
yeah.
and starting to appear on Benbecula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I know a few people from Benbecula. It doesn't surprise me. Anyway, the plot thickens. Whiskey everywhere, cash floating around.
Yeah, and the authorities were trying rather haphazardly to clamp it down. First court cases were in late April, small fines mostly.
Not enough for...
For McCall.
No.
Yeah, nowhere near enough. He and his boss, Gledhill, they were pushing for much more serious charges, vandalism, black marketeering. They were even accusing the local police of taking bribes, getting nasty. So, was it about lost duty or asserting control? Probably a bit of both, I think.
Yeah, and so were tougher sentences starting to be handed out then?
Yeah, eventually. So trials in June, 19 islanders got prison time.
Prison time for digging whiskey from a wreck.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty hard.
Yeah, although the sentences were relatively short, 20 days, maybe up to 2 months, but still prison time. Yep. McCall, of course, thought that wasn't nearly enough.
My God, right, okay. And how did the islanders react to this?
Not well. There was a bit of backlash. So McCall's car was damaged, customs officers were threatened, things got pretty tense. Yeah.
Okay. Feels like a real clash between different cultures, people who are upholding the law versus locals that are bending the law to suit themselves.
Local custom there, absolutely. And the authorities doubled down. So they started seizing islanders' boats.
Okay, that's not good. That's livelihoods at risk. So those were the boats that were suspected of being used to get to the wreck?
Yeah, that's right. Pretty devastating for the local community. A lot of them being fishermen, especially with a lot of lobster fishing in the area.
Yeah,
So
anything. Yeah, I mean, you're on islands, you need boats. Yeah. And they couldn't get them back?
Nope, requests were denied, and it really fueled resentment.
I can imagine, yeah, okay. This story, it just keeps spiralling. What about the whiskey that was salvaged, the 13,500 cases?
Yeah, so even that wasn't safe. It was put on trains, bound for the mainland, locked carriages, customs sealed.
Okay, secure finally.
Well, you'd think, but somewhere along the way, it was looted again. Seals were broken, doors were unlocked.
Unbelievable. Okay, who, how...
Still a mystery, really. Nobody really sure about that, but it definitely happened. And I think it just shows how desperate people were, or maybe how organised they were. There was clearly some insider intelligence here happening.
No, definite black market going on, wasn't there? Yeah. Okay, so that must have put further tension between the police who hadn't safeguarded and the customs guys.
Yeah, definitely. And again, McCall's boss, Gledhill, he was blaming the local police. Relationships were really at rock bottom at this point. Yeah.
So McCall's frustrated. The whiskey keeps disappearing. Yeah. What's the next move then?
Well, maybe the most controversial part, he decides the only way to stop theft is to destroy what's left in hold 5.
Okay. Yeah, destroying the remaining whiskey. I mean, that's got to be nuts. Anyway, how do they do that?
Well, with explosives, gelignite. He got permission and he blew it up.
Blew up perfectly good whiskey in wartime. I mean...
Yeah, maybe madness. 16 sticks of gelignite, apparently. It seemed then and now just incredibly wasteful. Pretty extreme act, but that's where the famous quote there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a chap called Angus John Campbell. Dynamiting whiskey, you wouldn't think there'd be men in the world so daft as that. It kind of sums it up.
Yeah. So how much do you reckon was actually taken by the islanders before the explosion? Any ideas?
Okay, well, yeah, there is what McCall thought. He thought about 2,000 cases. A chap called Arthur Swinton, who interviewed locals after the event, put it much higher, maybe around 7,000 cases, but we'll never know for sure.
Yeah, but still a pretty significant amount, whatever the number. And the banknotes?
Okay, well, the second salvage team, they recovered about £360,000 worth for the Bank of England.
Certainly not all of it.
Certainly well off all of it, yeah.
So, yeah, a fair bit of it vanished then.
Yeah, that's right. And the notes were turning up across banks in Britain, in Ireland, Switzerland, Malta, even the US and Jamaica.
Yeah, they travelled pretty far.
They did travel far, but sometimes they didn't travel very far because the local kids were found playing with them like Monopoly money. So they just had no idea of the value.
So much kicking
of
about.
these notes. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So what did the Bank of England do then?
Yeah, well, because the blue 10 shilling note was suddenly everywhere, they withdrew it. And in 1952, they actually replaced it with a purple one.
Yep. So they had to do all of that just because of the politician wreck, essentially. Yeah.
Seems so. But a lot of that £3 million was just never recovered.
Wow. Yeah. So looking back, the impact on the community must have been pretty huge then, with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And,
Floating around
that
and
sort of
everything,
stuff ricochets down the years and probably still has an impact on what happened then. Criminal record for many residents in peaceful times nowadays.
Probably a lot of resentment still against
makes
the
life
law.
very hard, very hard. And of course, there will have been informants who sold the whiskey and would have told stories about their own people as well.
Yeah, so quite complex dynamics there. But either way, the story became legendary.
Absolutely, embedded in the local culture. And then Compton Mackenzie, the author who lived next door on the island of Barra.
He wrote Whiskey Galore.
Well, exactly, based directly on this incident and made it world famous. And of course, we've now got the films as well.
Yep, and the pub in Erskine is still called The Politician, isn't it?
Right, that's right. The AM Politician, I think it is. A lasting tribute. And I think they've got kind of some of the items from the ship there as well.
Amazing. And bottles still turn up, don't they?
They do. Occasionally found at an auction for £1,000. Even the empty ones are collector's items. I mean, there must be so many bottles still underground, hidden away. And, even in the 20th century, they've been diving and they've found even more. And occasionally they bring out brands of whiskey that are tied into the story and the legend.
Yeah, the story keeps on giving.
It really does. It's the perfect store. Wartime, valuable contraband, remote island, community
versus authority.
Yeah.
Great story. Yeah. It highlights the tension. I think that tension between the letter of the law and local traditions or perceived rights. Yeah.
And just the sheer allure of forbidden goods, whiskey, cash, and the lasting impact on the community.
Yep. So decades on, bottles still surfacing, still selling for fortunes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes you wonder what else is still down there. What other secrets does the sea hold from that time? A wee swimming trip up to Erskine, Debs?
Yeah. Could be a little bit chilly. Definitely need the wetsuit for that one, I think.
It's got the Gulf Stream. It's got the Gulf Stream. You'd be fine.
Yeah, I might leave that to others. Or we could just possibly track down Whiskey Galore, maybe have a read of the book, have another watch of the film.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks, Debs. And thanks very much to everybody for listening as well. We are a brand new podcast for whiskey, so please do take a moment to give us a nod by subscribing. It's so important to us in these really early stages. You can join in and you can become a whiskey angel yourself. So find us on YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're also on Substack and on all the major podcast platforms. Just search for us, Whiskey Angels with a Z at the end. Thanks again for listening and Slanjiva.